After years of saving money, I booked a family trip. When we arrived at the hotel, my son said, "You'll sleep in the staff room. My wife will take my father-in-law. If you don't agree, pack your bags and leave." I said nothing. But the next morning, when they woke up, they discovered the surprise I had prepared for them. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. I'm Stephen, 62 years old, and for the past 2 years I've been living with a single dream, taking my family on a vacation that would bring us together again. After my wife Margaret passed away 3 years ago, everything changed. Benjamin, my 33-year-old son, became distant. His wife Isabella barely spoke to me except when she needed something. But I held on to hope that a family trip could heal the wounds that grief had opened between us. Every morning at 5, I would get up to work as a janitor at the office building downtown. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and allowed me to save every spare penny for this trip. I worked double shifts on weekends, cleaning bathrooms and emptying trash cans while other people my age were resting at home. My hands became rough and my back ached constantly, but every dollar I saved brought me closer to my goal. I researched destinations for months. I wanted something special, somewhere we could make new memories together. Finally, I chose a beautiful resort in Cancun, 5 days and 4 nights in paradise. The package cost me $8,000, money I had scraped together penny by penny. I even sold my late wife's jewelry, something that broke my heart, but I told myself Margaret would have wanted me to use it for the family's happiness. When I surprised Benjamin and Isabella with the trip, their reaction wasn't what I expected. Instead of gratitude, I saw calculation in their eyes. Isabella immediately started planning what clothes she would buy for the trip, while Benjamin asked if I had booked first-class flights. I hadn't, but I didn't tell them that. I just smiled and said we would have a wonderful time together. The flight was uncomfortable in economy class, but I didn't complain. Benjamin and Isabella spent the entire time whispering between themselves, occasionally laughing at jokes they didn't share with me. I stared out the window, watching the clouds below and imagining how perfect this vacation would be. How naive I was. When we arrived at the hotel, a magnificent 5-star resort with crystal-clear pools and pristine beaches, I felt proud. I had done this. I had given my family something beautiful. The lobby was elegant, with marble floors and chandeliers that sparkled like stars. Other families were checking in around us, all smiling and excited for their vacations. But then came the moment that shattered everything. As we approached the reception desk, Benjamin pulled me aside. His voice was cold, businesslike, as if he were speaking to a stranger. "Listen, Dad, Isabella's father is joining us tomorrow. We've rearranged the sleeping arrangements. You'll take the staff room. It's smaller, but you'll be comfortable enough. Isabella's father will take the main room since he's older and has back problems." I stood there feeling like the ground was disappearing beneath my feet. "Staff room?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "It's perfectly fine," Isabella chimed in, not even looking at me as she checked her phone. "You don't need much space anyway. You just sleep and that's it. Besides, my father is used to luxury. He wouldn't understand staying in a basic room." The receptionist, a young woman with kind eyes, looked uncomfortable. She glanced between us, clearly sensing the tension. "Sir, the reservation is under your name," she said to me carefully. "The junior suite and the standard room." Benjamin's jaw tightened. "Yes, but we're making some adjustments. My father will take the junior suite." I felt something breaking inside my chest. This trip, this dream I had worked so hard for, was being taken away from me before it even began. But what hurt more than anything was the casual way they discussed it, as if my feelings, my sacrifice, my 2 years of backbreaking work meant nothing. "If you don't agree," Benjamin said, his voice getting harder, "you can pack your bags and leave. Find another hotel if you want." The lobby suddenly felt enormous around me. Other families continued their cheerful check-ins while my world crumbled. I looked at my son, this man I had raised, educated, and loved unconditionally, and I saw a stranger. Where was the little boy who used to run to me when he fell off his bicycle? Where was the teenager who cried in my arms when his first girlfriend broke his heart? I could have protested. I could have reminded him who paid for this trip. I could have caused a scene. But instead, I nodded slowly. "Of course," I said quietly. "Whatever makes everyone comfortable." The receptionist handed me the key to room 1205, the staff room. Isabella and Benjamin took the keys to the junior suite without even saying thank you. As we walked toward the elevators, I heard Isabella whisper to Benjamin, "I can't believe he actually agreed. My father will be so much more comfortable now." That night, lying on the narrow bed in a room barely larger than a closet, I stared at the ceiling and felt something changing inside me. For 3 years since Margaret's death, I had bent over backwards to keep this family together. I had swallowed my pride, ignored their slights, and convinced myself that love meant always giving in. But as I listened to the sounds of the hotel, laughter from other rooms, the distant music from the pool area, the ocean waves outside, I realized something important. This wasn't love. This was exploitation. And tomorrow, when they woke up, they would discover just how tired I had become of being treated like a doormat. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Margaret's face. She would have been furious if she had witnessed what happened in that lobby. "Stephen," she would have said, her green eyes flashing with anger, "you raised him better than this. Don't you dare let them treat you like a servant." Margaret always knew how to fight for what was right. She never let anyone walk over our family, not even when Benjamin was a rebellious teenager who thought he knew everything. She would grab him by the shoulders and look him straight in the eye until he understood the difference between right and wrong. Maybe that's what I should have done all these years instead of trying to be the understanding, accommodating father. I got up at dawn and walked to the small window of my cramped room. The view was the hotel's service area, trash dumpsters, delivery trucks, and the tired faces of workers starting their early shifts. Meanwhile, from the junior suite, Benjamin and Isabella probably had a stunning ocean view. The irony wasn't lost on me. As I got dressed, I remembered the conversation with Margaret 2 months before she died. We were sitting on our old couch, watching television, when she suddenly grabbed my hand. "Promise me something, Stephen," she said, her voice weak from the chemotherapy. "Promise me you won't let anyone take advantage of your good heart, not even Benjamin." I had kissed her forehead and promised, but I hadn't kept that promise. Since her funeral, I had done nothing but give in to Benjamin and Isabella's demands. When they needed money for their down payment, I had given them my retirement savings. When they wanted me to babysit their neighbors' children so Isabella could go out with her friends, I had agreed without question. When they needed someone to clean their house before their dinner parties, I had shown up with my cleaning supplies. I had convinced myself that this was what good fathers do, that love meant sacrifice always and without question. But sitting in that tiny room, surrounded by the sounds of housekeeping carts rolling down the hallway, I understood that I had confused love with doormat behavior. The breakfast area was magnificent, a buffet with fresh tropical fruits, pastries that looked like works of art, and coffee that smelled like heaven. I served myself a simple plate and sat at a small table near the window. From there I could see the pool area, where families were already enjoying their morning swim. 20 minutes later, Benjamin and Isabella appeared. They had clearly slept well in their comfortable beds. Isabella wore a designer sundress that probably cost more than I earned in a week, while Benjamin sported an expensive polo shirt. They loaded their plates with the most expensive items from the buffet: smoked salmon, imported cheeses, champagne for their orange juice. They sat at a large table on the terrace without even looking around to see where I was. I watched them laugh and chat, completely comfortable in their bubble of entitlement. No one asked if I had slept well. No one invited me to join them. I was invisible, just the old man who had paid for their vacation. But I wasn't just watching them. I was studying them. The way Isabella constantly checked her phone, probably posting photos to make her friends jealous. The way Benjamin gestured grandly when he talked, as if he were the king of the resort. The way they both seemed to assume that this luxury was their natural right, not a gift from someone who had worked himself to exhaustion to provide it. After breakfast, they went to the pool. Isabella stretched out on a premium lounge chair, while Benjamin ordered expensive cocktails. I stayed in the restaurant, nursing my coffee and making phone calls. The first was to my old friend Carlos, who worked in hotel management. "Stephen, how wonderful to hear from you," Carlos said. "Are you enjoying your vacation?" "It's been educational," I replied. "Listen, Carlos, I need to ask you about something. If someone books hotel rooms but hasn't actually paid the full amount, what happens?" Carlos laughed. "Well, that would be a problem. The hotel would require immediate payment or the guests would have to leave. Why do you ask?" "Just curious," I said, but my mind was already working. My second call was to the bank. "I'd like to check the recent transactions on my credit card." I told the representative. What I discovered made my blood boil. Benjamin and Isabella hadn't just rearranged the sleeping arrangements. They had used my credit card information to book additional services. Spa treatments for Isabella, golf lessons for Benjamin, even room service charges that I hadn't authorized. They weren't just treating me like a servant. They were stealing from me. As I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Fury. Pure, cleansing rage that burned away the fog of self-pity and people-pleasing that had clouded my judgment for so long. Margaret's voice echoed in my memory. Don't let anyone take advantage of your good heart. I walked back to my tiny room and sat on the narrow bed. Outside, I could hear the sounds of families enjoying their vacations. Children laughing, parents chatting, the splash of people diving into pools. But inside that room, I was planning something that would change everything. They thought they could treat me like a doormat. They thought my love was so desperate, so unconditional, that I would accept any humiliation just to avoid being alone. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Tomorrow morning, when they woke up in their comfortable beds, expecting another day of luxury at my expense, they would discover the surprise I had prepared for them. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt something that had been buried under layers of grief and accommodation. I felt powerful. The second day of our vacation started like the first, with me invisible and them treating the resort like their personal kingdom. But while they lounged by the pool, I was busy making discoveries that would change everything. I had woken up early again, this time with a clear mission. After yesterday's phone calls, I knew something was wrong beyond just their disrespectful behavior. The unauthorized charges on my credit card were just the beginning. I needed to understand exactly what Benjamin and Isabella thought they could get away with. At the front desk, I met with the manager, a professional woman named Sophia, who had been watching our family dynamics with obvious concern. "Mr. Stephen," she said quietly, "I hope you don't mind me asking, but is everything all right with your accommodation? Yesterday, during check-in, I noticed some tension." I appreciated her discretion. "Actually, I wanted to review my reservation details. There seem to be some charges I don't understand." Sophia pulled up my account on her computer, and her expression grew troubled. "Sir, I see here that additional services have been added to your bill. Spa packages, premium dining experiences, golf lessons, and," she paused, "room service orders for premium champagne and caviar. These additions total nearly $4,000. My hands trembled slightly as the reality hit me. I didn't authorize any of those charges. "The requests came from the rooms registered under your reservation," Sophia explained carefully. "Your son and daughter-in-law have been signing your name to these service requests since yesterday evening. $4,000, almost half of what I had saved for this entire trip. They had been spending my money like water while I slept in a room meant for hotel staff. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible." "There's something else," Sophia continued, lowering her voice. "Your daughter-in-law called this morning to request that her father's room be upgraded to our presidential suite. She said you had approved the additional expense." I stared at her in disbelief. "The presidential suite? It's an additional $500 per night. She seemed very confident that you would cover it." Sophia's expression was sympathetic but professional. "Should I proceed with the upgrade?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. In my mind, I heard Margaret's voice again, but this time she wasn't just disappointed, she was furious. "They're not just disrespecting you, Stephen. They're stealing from you, and they think you're too weak to stop them." "No," I said finally, my voice stronger than it had been in years. "Cancel all unauthorized charges, and I need to speak with you privately about some changes to the reservation." Over the next hour, Sophia and I reviewed everything. The unauthorized spa treatments, the premium meals, the expensive alcohol, all of it charged to my room without my knowledge or consent. But as we talked, I learned something even more interesting about hotel policies and reservation management. "Mr. Stephen," Sophia explained, "since you're the primary cardholder and the reservation is under your name, you have complete control over all aspects of the booking. You can modify room assignments, cancel services, even restrict access to charging privileges." "What do you mean by restrict access?" "Well, if you wanted to, you could limit which rooms have charging privileges to your account. You could also modify the reservation to reflect your actual preferences for room assignments." I thought about this carefully. What would happen if I changed the reservation so that only I had access to the junior suite? Sophia checked her computer. "That would be completely within your rights. The other guests would need to provide their own payment method for their accommodation, and if they couldn't pay, then they would need to find alternative arrangements. I spent the afternoon making phone calls from the business center. First, I called my bank again to report the unauthorized charges. They assured me that since I hadn't signed for these services personally, I could dispute them. Next, I called my old friend Carlos again. Carlos, I need your advice about something. If someone has been charging services to my hotel account without permission, what are my options? Stephen, that's theft. You have every right to stop it immediately and demand they pay for their own expenses. Are you having problems with your family? You could say that. Carlos was quiet for a moment. Stephen, I've known you for 20 years. You're the most generous man I know, but there's a difference between generosity and being taken advantage of. Don't let anyone steal from you, not even family. By evening, I had made my decision. I returned to Sophia's office with a clear plan. I want to make some changes to my reservation, I told her. Of course, Mr. Stephen. What would you like to do? First, cancel all unauthorized charges and remove charging privileges from all rooms except my own. Second, I want to change my room assignment. I'll take the junior suite that I originally paid for. Sophia nodded, typing on her computer. And the other guests? They can pay for their own accommodations. If they can't, they'll need to make other arrangements. Should I inform them of these changes? I thought about Margaret, about her strength, about the promises I had made and broken. No, let them discover it in the morning. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in years. Not just since Margaret's death, but for years before that too. I realized I had been carrying the weight of other people's expectations and demands for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like to make decisions based on my own needs and dignity. The junior suite was beautiful, exactly what I had imagined when I booked this trip. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the ocean, the bathroom had a jacuzzi tub, and the bed was so comfortable I felt like I was floating on clouds. This was what my 2 years of hard work had earned, and I was finally claiming it. I woke up naturally at 7 in the morning, refreshed and energized. I ordered room service, fresh fruit, coffee and pastries, and enjoyed breakfast on my private balcony while watching the sunrise over the Caribbean. For the first time since arriving, I felt like I was actually on vacation. Around 9 o'clock, my phone started ringing. Benjamin's name appeared on the screen, but I didn't answer. It rang again, and again. Then Isabella's number flashed on the display. I turned the phone off and continued enjoying my coffee. At 10:30, there was a knock on my door. Through the peephole, I could see Benjamin pacing in the hallway, his face red with anger. Isabella stood beside him, her arms crossed and her expression furious. I took my time getting to the door. "Dad, what the hell is going on?" Benjamin demanded the moment I opened the door. "They're saying we have to pay for our rooms ourselves. They cut off our charging privileges. Isabella's father is arriving this afternoon, and now there's no presidential suite reserved for him." I stepped aside to let them into my beautiful suite. Their eyes immediately took in the ocean view, the elegant furnishings, the remains of my room service breakfast on the balcony. "This is where you're staying?" Isabella asked, her voice sharp with disbelief. "Yes," I said calmly, "this is the room I paid for." "But we agreed that I would take this room," Benjamin said, his voice rising. "You were supposed to stay in the staff room." "Actually, we didn't agree to anything," I replied, moving to close the balcony door. "You told me what you had decided, and I chose not to argue at the time. But I've reconsidered." Isabella's face was turning red. "My father is arriving this afternoon. He's expecting the presidential suite. Then you'll need to pay for it yourselves." "We don't have that kind of money," Benjamin exploded. "You know our financial situation. That's why you invited us on this trip, to help us have a vacation we couldn't afford ourselves." I looked at my son, really looked at him. At 33 years old, he was still expecting his father to solve all his problems, still believing that my love meant unlimited financial support with no respect or gratitude required. "Benjamin," I said quietly, "when did you last thank me for this trip?" "What? When did you thank me for working double shifts for 2 years to save money for this vacation? When did you thank me for wanting to bring our family together?" He stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "Dad, you don't need to be thanked for taking care of your family. That's what fathers do." "Is it?" I asked. "Is that what fathers do? Work themselves to exhaustion while their children treat them like servants, pay for vacations while sleeping in staff rooms, accept theft and disrespect without complaint?" "Theft?" Isabella's voice was shrill. What are you talking about? I pulled out the printed bill that Sophia had given me. $4,000 in unauthorized charges, spa treatments, premium dining, expensive alcohol, all charged to my account without my permission. You've been signing my name to service requests since the day we arrived. The silence that followed was deafening. Benjamin and Isabella exchanged glances, and I could see them calculating, trying to find a way to justify what they had done. Those were just extras, Benjamin said finally. We thought you wanted us to enjoy ourselves. Did you think I wanted you to steal from me? It's not stealing, Isabella snapped. You're family. Family shares with each other. Really? I asked. Then why am I the only one doing the sharing? When was the last time either of you paid for anything for me? When was the last time you invited me to dinner at your house without expecting me to bring the groceries? When was the last time you called me just to see how I was doing, not because you needed something? They stood there in my beautiful suite, faces flushed with anger and embarrassment, and I saw them clearly for the first time. Not as my beloved son and daughter-in-law, but as two adults who had been using me as their personal ATM while treating me with less respect than they would show a stranger. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to pay for your own accommodations for the rest of this trip. You're going to cover the charges for Isabella's father's room, and you're going to start treating me with the basic respect that any human being deserves. And if we can't pay? Benjamin asked, his voice challenging. I walked to the window and looked out at the beautiful ocean view. Then you'll have to make other arrangements. I hear there are some very nice budget hotels about 20 minutes from here. The sound of the door slamming behind them was the most beautiful music I had heard in years. For the next 3 hours, my phone rang constantly. Benjamin called 17 times. Isabella called 12 times. I counted each ring as I sat on my balcony, reading a book I had brought but never expected to have time to enjoy. Each ignored call felt like a small victory. Around 2 in the afternoon, there was another knock on my door. This time it was Sophia from the front desk, accompanied by hotel security. Mr. Stephen, she said apologetically, I'm sorry to disturb you, but there's been some commotion in the lobby. Your family members are demanding to speak with you, and they're becoming quite disruptive to other guests. Through the peephole, I could see Benjamin pacing like a caged animal. Isabella sat in a lobby chair, crying dramatically into her phone. Next to her stood a tall, distinguished man in an expensive suit, clearly her father, who had arrived expecting presidential suite treatment. They're claiming you've stolen their vacation and left them homeless, Sophia continued. They're asking us to force you to honor the original arrangement. And what did you tell them? That the reservation is in your name, you're the paying guest, and hotel policy doesn't allow us to override the primary guest's decisions. I smiled. Thank you for following proper procedures. However, Sophia said carefully, they're threatening to call the police and claim elder abuse. They're saying you're not mentally competent to make these decisions. My blood chilled. Elder abuse. Mental incompetence. They were actually willing to destroy my reputation and potentially have me committed just to get their free vacation back. Would you like security to escort them from the premises? Sophia asked. I thought about it. Part of me wanted them gone, wanted to enjoy my vacation in peace, but another part of me, the part that sounded like Margaret, knew this needed to end properly. No, I said finally. Send them up, but have security wait nearby. 10 minutes later, they crowded into my suite like an invading army. Benjamin, Isabella, and her father, whose name I learned was Richard. Richard looked around the suite with obvious approval, clearly expecting to be staying here himself. Dad, Benjamin started, his voice trying to sound reasonable. We need to talk about this situation. You're not thinking clearly. My thinking has never been clearer. Isabella stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. Stephen, please. My father flew all the way here expecting a nice vacation. He's retired, he doesn't have much money. You're going to humiliate him by making him pay for his own room. I looked at Richard, this man who had raised Isabella to believe she was entitled to other people's money. Richard, I said, did you know that I worked 2 years of double shifts to pay for this vacation? Richard looked uncomfortable. Well, I assumed Benjamin was paying for it. Did you know that your daughter has been charging thousands of dollars of unauthorized expenses to my account? Now wait a minute, Richard said, his voice getting defensive. Isabella told me this was a family vacation, all expenses paid. By me, I said. All expenses paid by me while being treated like hired help. Benjamin exploded. You're being ridiculous. This is what families do for each other. Really? I asked. When was the last time you did something like this for me? The silence stretched on. Isabella wiped her eyes and tried a different approach. Stephen, you're grieving. You're not yourself since Margaret died. Maybe you should talk to someone professional about these episodes. Episodes. She was calling my refusal to be stolen from and disrespected an episode. Let me tell you what an episode looks like, I said, my voice getting stronger. An episode is working yourself to exhaustion for 2 years while your family takes you for granted. An episode is sleeping in a staff room while your son enjoys the luxury you paid for. An episode is discovering that your family sees you as nothing more than a wallet with legs. That's not true, Benjamin protested. Isn't it? When was the last time you visited me just to spend time together? When was the last time you called to ask how I was feeling? When was the last time you invited me to dinner without expecting me to bring the groceries and clean up afterward? Benjamin's face was red. You're our father. Taking care of family is what you're supposed to do. And what are you supposed to do, Benjamin? He stared at me, clearly never having considered that question. I'll tell you what you're supposed to do, I continued. You're supposed to love me back. You're supposed to treat me with respect. You're supposed to appreciate the sacrifices I've made instead of seeing them as your birthright. Richard cleared his throat. Perhaps we could reach some compromise. No, I said firmly. No more compromises. For 3 years since your mother died, I've compromised my dignity, my self-respect, and my financial security trying to buy your love. But love can't be bought and respect can't be demanded. Isabella was crying again, but now I could see the calculation behind her tears. What do you want from us? I want you to leave. Leave the hotel. Leave my suite. Figure out your own accommodations. Pay for your own vacation. And maybe if you can find it in yourselves to treat me like a human being instead of an ATM, we can have a conversation when we get home. Benjamin's mask finally slipped completely. How selfish, old man. You're going to ruin everyone's vacation because your feelings got hurt. I walked to the door and opened it. My feelings didn't get hurt, Benjamin. My eyes got opened. As they filed out, Richard paused at the door. You know, he said quietly, if I had a father who loved me enough to work 2 years to give me a vacation, I think I'd find a way to show some gratitude. Isabella grabbed her father's arm. Dad, don't. No, Isabella, Richard said, shaking his head. This man deserves better than what you've given him. And then they were gone, leaving me alone in my beautiful suite with the sound of waves outside my window and peace in my heart for the first time in years. The next morning, I woke up without an alarm clock for the first time in decades. No work schedule, no family obligations, no guilt about taking time for myself. Just the sound of waves and the warmth of sunlight streaming through my windows. I ordered room service again, not because I needed to prove a point, but because I could. Because this was my vacation, paid for with my hard work, and I deserved to enjoy it. As I ate fresh fruit and drank perfectly brewed coffee on my balcony, I watched other families on the beach below. Happy families laughing together, children running while their parents watched with genuine smiles. Around 10 o'clock, I saw Benjamin and Isabella by the pool. They had managed to get a basic room somehow. Probably Richard had paid for it. They looked miserable sitting stiffly in cheap lounge chairs, checking their phones constantly. Isabella kept glancing up at my balcony, but I didn't wave. I spent the day doing things I hadn't done in years. I read an entire book without interruption. I took a long walk on the beach, feeling sand between my toes and salt air in my lungs. I had a massage at the spa, the first one of my life, and discovered what it felt like to have someone take care of me for once. At dinner, I ate alone at the hotel's finest restaurant. The waiter, a young man named Miguel, was attentive and kind. We chatted about his family, his dreams of opening his own restaurant someday. It struck me that this stranger showed me more genuine interest in 30 minutes than my own family had shown in 3 years. You seem very peaceful, Miguel observed as he served my dessert. Are you here celebrating something special? I thought about his question. You could say that. I'm celebrating my freedom. That evening I called my friend Carlos. Stephen, how's the vacation going? It's been educational, I said, using the same word I'd used before, but now it had a completely different meaning. And your family. We've reached an understanding. They're learning to take care of themselves. Carlos was quiet for a moment. Good for you, my friend. Margaret would be proud. Margaret. I hadn't thought about her all day, not in the painful way I usually did. For the first time since her death, thinking about her brought warmth instead of crushing grief. That night, I called the front desk. "Sophia, it's Stephen. I wanted to thank you for your help over the past few days." "Of course, Mr. Stephen. Have you enjoyed your stay?" "More than I expected." "Actually, I wanted to ask, do you have availability to extend my reservation by 3 days?" "Let me check. Yes, we do. Would you like to keep the same suite?" "Yes. And Sophia, if anyone asks to charge anything to my room, the answer is no." She laughed. "Understood completely. I spent those extra 3 days rediscovering who I was beyond being someone's father, someone's caretaker, someone's solution to financial problems. I swam in the ocean, learned to paint watercolors from an art instructor, and had long conversations with other travelers. I met Maria, a widow from Spain who was traveling alone for the first time in 40 years. We weren't romantic, neither of us was ready for that, but we were kindred spirits, two people learning to live for ourselves again. On my last morning, I sat on my balcony watching the sunrise and planning my new life. I would sell the big house that held too many memories and too many expectations. I would find a smaller place, maybe near the beach, where I could wake up to ocean sounds every day. I would travel more, volunteer at places where my help was appreciated, and surround myself with people who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. My phone buzzed with a text from Benjamin. "Dad, when are you coming home? We need to talk." I looked at the message for a long time, then deleted it without responding. Benjamin would need to learn that my attention, like my money, was no longer freely available just because he demanded it. As I packed my bags, I found the photo of Margaret that I always carried with me. In it, she was laughing at something I'd said, her eyes bright with love and mischief. I could almost hear her voice. "It's about time, Stephen. I was wondering when you'd remember that you deserve to be happy too." I kissed the photo gently and tucked it away. Then I picked up my suitcase and walked toward the door of my suite, no longer a beaten-down old man desperate for his family's approval, but a 62-year-old man with a future full of possibilities and the wisdom to choose who deserved a place in it. The greatest revenge, I realized, wasn't making them pay for their own vacation. It was discovering that I didn't need their love to be complete. I was enough, all by myself. And for the first time in years, that felt like more than enough. It felt like everything.